Right, so pretty easy. We talked about a few of the different versions or permutations of actions, the 4 different versions of taking, the strengthening, and then the 3 different versions of weakening, which was a disengage, a zuckin, and a cut around, or the different types of cut arounds. The other thing that we talked about was the different games, so I want to show those off really quickly too, just to make sure that you have that documented. The first one being this idea of how do we train NDES on like a really basic level, just really getting your students to tether themselves to each other's movement. The drill that we talked about before is that we're both in long point, and one's a coach and one's the fencer. The goal of the fencer is to maintain this relationship with the marble, being this exact position. So if Paige is looking at the position of the sword, you'll see the weeks are crossing. You can go this way. It'll be probably easier. If I move my hands forward, Jack is trying to maintain this relationship and probably move his hands backwards. Right? If I move my hands backwards, Jack is trying to maintain inversely. As you can hear, like the blades are sliding. Ideally, they shouldn't be. If it's really, really tethered, it should be like this. Boom, boom, boom. At some point in time, I pull my hands backwards, and that invites a thrusting action into this, right? So if we do that again, we can be this close. We can be a little bit closer. We can be artificially close, because we're just training in those. Boom, maintain. At the entire point in time, when you're watching your students, you can see, are they actually working indes? Are they working leg? Right, that was index because it happened in between my action. If it's a little bit late, this is what it will look like. So Jack's going to be artificially late. This is late, right? This is an indes, and that's kind of like a more drastic version. But that was like the base drill. Really, this isn't something that you do for longer than 5 minutes to get your students aware of it. By the end of it, they should say, if I'm the coach and Jack's the fencer, and he's like a newer fencer. As the coach, when this happens, I can ask the fencer, like, hey, did that actually, was that indes or was that right? And then Jack ideally can say, oh, I can tell that was a little bit late, right? So we're just building the skills. But let's move on to the taker game, just because that was the one that you said that people were having an issue with, and we'll be done, and I'll send this over to you. Okay, so the taker game was coach and fencer. Right now we have a pretty good amount of space, as you can see. So the way that it's going to start is, as the coach, I'll start from the beginning of my space with the ending of my space being right over there. As the coach, oh my bad, this would be Jack as coach and switch spots. As the coach, I can only move backwards, or I can stand still. The fencer is allowed to move forwards, backwards, or stand still. But remember, they can only move forwards when they're considered strong. If they are not strong and they're in striking distance or Krieg, they have to back up and reorient their place if they are strong. The other thing that Jack can do is that he can move indes of my action to maintain forward momentum and strike, right? The example, if you did this really slowly, is that as a coach, I'm trying to not let my opponent be strong with my partner. As a coach, we can be really cooperative and give our fencer chances to work this action, or we can be really, really stingy and like not make it easy. Can you show both of us as well, Paige? If Jack strengthens, if you're doing this in slow motion, he can move forward. And again, like we talked about, there's only a few different things that I can do to make it so that Jack isn't strong. I can strengthen, right? So that Jack is no longer strong, but he worked indes and he can keep moving forwards. I can disengage my blade. Jack can work indes with that action as well, right? So it's relatively simple. I think the pitfalls that you'll find when you're doing this drill or watching it is that people don't really know what they're doing. Like you talked about, they're probably moving their tip and not their hands. So, for example, being if Jack just moves the tip of his blade, but he doesn't move the cross guard at all. Think of like trying to control my sword and push like that, right? It's hard to say who's actually strong here, and it could be that Jack is strong and moving forward, but as I am actually getting him out of that position, he doesn't identify that this is happening and he keeps moving forward, right? This is when we say that as a coach, we should tell them like, hey, we're not quite there, and I can hit back at them if need be, and that's totally valid. Other things that are worth mentioning too when we talk about rules is we don't want to have our sword higher than our shoulder because we can really easily break this game. Jack can break this game by going up to the cron and just running me down, and your students may find this as well, or even if we are just winding and playing this game normally, at some point in time we might find something like you strengthen, you're moving, you move indes, boom, and I'm like, ha, and now you're not strong. In this position, for the sake of the game, again, we're restricting it, but if somebody was like, well, why are we restricting it? What would we actually be doing if we're fencing it over here? The answer is usually more rough highlights, so we're opening our arms for cutting actions. So if we're going at speed and the coach notices that their student goes up high, boom, it can be something like, hey, I'm testing you, make sure that we don't do that, right? It can be as simple as that. Did you catch that, the cutting action? Cool. Let's go back. If we're playing this slowly, like really slowly, and I really recommend that you play this with your students so that you guys can both get much better at it. The idea being, what I showed you, there's different permutations of actions, such as Jack can weaken by disengaging, Jack can weaken by second, Jack can strengthen by going to flute, or Jack can strengthen by going to long point. Like, these are all basically the 4 actions that are happening in the Taker game. If we go slowly, these are all happening in response to each other. So Jack is only moving forward when strong, Jack moves Indes at my action, off the action of train. Maybe they're not strong, maybe I move Indes, they reorient their position, right? Forward, right? So this should be ideally a bit of a competitive game. Awesome, and then they get close, right? Ideally, it's that fast for you and your students. If you see them going any faster than that, especially in the beginning, I'd really recommend that you say, hey, like, let's slow it down. Because 1, they're not really gonna work indes because they haven't trained that Fool-in timing. And 2, they probably don't really know what the answers are for those certain situations. So they're just gonna be guessing and not really learning very well. But yeah, that's good.